All right, so it took a little bit longer than we would have hoped to get our brand new set of LoD rocker guards. These are the Signature Series rocker guards, but we're super excited to get them installed, and that's what we're gonna do today. If there's one thing that LoD is really good at, it's packaging. They do an exceptional job of making sure that their rocker guards or any product that they make doesn't get damaged in shipment to a fault. So as you can see here, it's going to take a little bit of effort just to get these things out of here. Looks pretty good. All right, let's get the other one out. Looks like a hardware box for a JL. All right. Looks like all the hardware, some of the fancy trim, more fancy trim. That's my good girl. Oh yes. Gonna watch her install today, huh? Okay, so we have a Rubicon JL Wrangler, which means that it came with a set of rocker guards. And while they do work surprisingly well, they actually do have a few limitations. Namely, they're actually just attached to the pinch seam of the body as opposed to being attached to the frame, and that causes a few problems. The biggest problem is that after multiple big hits, the rocker guards themselves start to roll upward and make contact with the rocker panels themselves. And that puts dents in it, as you can see right here. And the other problem is, being so close to the body, they don't give you a whole lot of distance between you and whatever obstacle you're sliding across or you're pivoting around, and that can still leave you open to getting damaged like you see right here. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and remove the factory rocker guards. And in order to do that, there are 3 bolts securing it to the bottom of the tub, and you're going to need a 13mm socket to remove them. There are also 6 screws holding it to the pinch seam itself, and those will require a 10mm socket. 13mm socket and a 10mm deep socket. We have all the bolts off, and so now we can take this rocker guard off. Got some mud in there from some previous trips. I'm thinking I should clean that up a little bit. Give me a second. After cleaning up the rocker panels, you can actually see there's a good crease going across the whole bottom of the rocker panel where the rocker guard was hitting. So maybe they didn't do such a great job after all. Alright, so there are a few more bolts that we still need to take off the Jeep before we can install our rocker guards, but we need to identify which rocker guard is which. And as you can see here, the 2 body mounts are closer together right here on the back end of this rocker guard, and that's how it is on the frame as well. So this is definitely the driver's side. Impact wrench, 16mm socket. Now I'm going to grab me a floor jack just so that I could use it to help me hold these rocker guards in place because they actually weigh quite a bit, and that'll make it a lot easier to get all the bolts installed. Going to grab some blocks of wood to help stabilize things on the floor jack. Maybe 2, 3 pieces of 2x4. Okay, we're going to grab the rocker guard. Okay, as you can see here, I'm trying to position these mounts underneath the body mounts, the brackets that are on the frame. These are the body mount brackets. They're going to be installed up here on the frame mounts, on here as well. Once we got everything in position, we can go ahead and slowly raise the jack up, making sure that everything fits where they belong. Alright, so we ran into a bit of a problem, and the problem is that the body mount bolts have these large washers that the brackets for the LoD rocker guards need to clear. Unfortunately, the space between the washer and the frame is a little too tight right now, so we can't actually get these things on. So we're going to go ahead and lower the rocker guard and see if we can't move those washers a little bit out so that we can get these things installed. 18mm socket. So we're going to go ahead and loosen up these bolts right here, the body mount bolts, and then see if we can push things around. You can see it moves quite a bit. So I'm going to bring it in as much as I can. We'll go ahead and torque those in just a moment, but we'll grab this other bolt too. As you can see, it moves quite a bit. We're going to move it out as far as we can. Grab a torque wrench. It's supposed to be 92 foot-pounds of torque, so that's what we're going to set this to. Okay. All right, worked. Totally cleared. All right, so now I've got the rocker guard positioned to the best of my ability with the jack. It's still not 100% on. I kind of need to move things around. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these, the factory nuts that we removed earlier from the body mounts, and I'm going to loosely thread them on by hand, and then that'll allow me to reposition the jack to get everything else situated. Lower the jack just a bit. You can see everything's kind of holding itself up. Kind of a first look at what they'll look like once they're installed. Looks pretty nice. Let's talk about the hardware that LoD provides with their rocker guards. As you can see here, I've got them all assembled and sorted out accordingly. And I need to point out first and foremost that these two bolts, although they look the same, they're actually quite different. These have the 3 tick marks, which indicates that it's a grade 5 bolt. And these actually have an 8.8 and are actually of a finer thread. These are metric bolts that go into the frame rails that are already tapped for them. There's miscellaneous hardware like washers that you're going to be using. These are flagged nuts that actually go in conjunction with these bolts right here. These smaller screws are meant for the trim panels. These two guys right here are self-tapping bolts that we're going to be using for an optional fastener to attach the rocker guards to the frame rail. And these nuts and longer bolts are also intended to help secure the rocker guards in place. So that's pretty much everything that we've got here, and now we're going to go ahead and finish up the install. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and loosely install all the hardware that I can, just so that I can shift things around as needed. And so we're going to start with these guys. Okay, so now we're going to grab one of these flagged nuts and a bolt to go with it. Grab a washer, make sure that it fits. Perfect. We're going to go ahead and insert the flagged nut through this large slot in the frame. And then fish in the bolt. Okay, so now we can go ahead and grab one of these longer bolts and a nut for it, and a couple washers. Because 3/4 inch and 19 millimeter are basically the same thing, I'm going to go ahead and grab a 19 millimeter socket and wrench to wrap this all up. Gonna need to install all the trim pieces and then we'll be done. All right, so using a 5/32 Allen wrench, we're gonna go ahead and secure these guys. I think that's it. Looks good. Real happy with the way they look. Obviously, they're a hell of a lot beefier than the factory rocker guards. Bolted to the frame, it's going to offer a lot more strength. It's actually sitting a lot further away from the body, giving a lot more protection. And then, of course, right here, it's actually a usable step. Something that the factory guards never offered. Looks good. So unlike on the driver's side, the passenger side frame rails actually have a couple bolts that are securing the gas tank skid plate to it. And those are the bolts that we're going to use to secure the LoD rocker guards onto it. So we're going to go ahead and use an 18 millimeter socket to remove them. This nut, or this bolt, is a little chewed up from wheeling. There we go. All right. Unlike the driver's side, which had a hole in the frame rail that goes all the way through and allowed us to attach a long bolt through the bracket of this LoD rocker guard, the passenger side does not have that. So what we're going to go ahead and do is drill the optional hole that they recommend if you do any off-roading. So I'm going to take a pencil or something small to write with and at least mark off where the hole needs to be. And then we're going to have to uninstall the passenger side rocker guard again so we can drill that hole. Safety goggles, because we're going to be drilling. Drill bits. So what we're going to do first is take a center punch, mark our hole where we're going to drill. You can see that's the hole or the oval that I made. We just need to drill a hole, so stick this in here dead center or thereabout. All right, to get started, I'm going to use a step bit or a unibit just to get a clean hole through the front side of the frame, and then I'll use that as kind of a guide or pilot hole to drive this larger 9/16 drill bit all the way through to the other side. So this step bit goes all the way up to 1/2 inch, so it's a little bit small, but it'll still act as a nice pilot hole. Put on my glasses. I'm going to actually put a little bit of cutting oil on my drill bit too, just to keep it cool. It sucks to get metal splinters stuck in you. Okay, so we ran into a little bit of a problem, and that is this drill is quite large. At least the shaft of the body, you can see, gets physically larger, and it was making contact with the pinch seam. So while I was able to get the first hole drilled through, and although I might have been able to go all the way through, it would have been at an angle. and that might be okay, but fortunately I have one of these. As you can see, it's a right angle drill and has a much smaller profile, so this is going to allow me to drill a nice clean hole straight through, and so that's what I'm going to use instead. A little bit of cutting oil again. As you can see, got some battle wounds. It's being sprayed with high-speed heated metal, like shrapnel, coming from the drill. That was fun. Hole is drilled. We can finally wrap this up. All right. Universal flat black. Not that it's a real big deal here in Nevada where rust isn't an issue, but for people in areas where they have a lot of salt, it's always a good idea to touch up the holes that you drill with a little bit of touch-up paint or otherwise. Doesn't need to be pretty, it's all going to be hidden. Just trying to get all the metal painted over. So as a final option, if you really want to, there are actually 2 additional holes that you can drill located right on the bottom of the frame rail. You can see opposite of this bolt right here, and then use these self-tapping bolts to secure it in place. But I actually think that we can get by without it, and if in fact we start testing it out and we have problems where it looks like it's not holding up, then we'll add the extra bolt. But for now, I think we're going to leave it off. They look good. They look shiny, maybe a little too shiny. I think we need to take them out on the rocks and beat them up. And there you have it, the LoD Signature Series rock sliders installed on a Jeep JL Wrangler Unlimited. Be sure to check out future episodes of the JL Journal where you'll get to see them being tested out on the rocks.